toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance.
So welcome to our 5th of the 6 classes on the resurrection body, and this part called Birthing the Resurrection Body. So tonight we'll get to experience Fana, the light from which all things are created, all beings are created. Learning more about the Zoroastrian tradition. We'll be thinking about what are called the transformation angels, the feminine angels of transformation, that hopefully you'll have a lot of recognition about them. And we'll take some time to do meditations, a couple of meditations together to ground this energy in our being. So we were just listening to the invocation. We said the invocation, and in it we talked about the perfection of qualities, some of the qualities. And this will definitely involve this light that we're going to be speaking about, Svarna, and perfection, meaning, it's beautifully said, the perfection of these qualities, and it happens in the same reflective operation that forms our own resurrection bodies. So we are transformed, the wazifas, the qualities are transformed, God is transformed, the world is transformed. It is a great work that is done in a practice. So let's take a look first at this Varna, and I want you to know it's spelled X-V-A-R-N-A-H, Svarna. You had a quote for us to begin with.
Yeah. This is a quote from Ibn Arabi from Alone with the Alone. He's talking about the doctrine of imagination. He said that this doctrine of imagination is far removed from the Neoplatonic idea of emanation. We must think rather of a process of increasing illumination, gradually raising the possibilities eternally latent in the original divine being to a state of luminescence. I'll read that again. We must think rather, so instead of just thinking of emanation the way light usually comes forth, we must think of a process of increasing illumination, gradually raising the possibilities eternally latent in the original divine being to a state of luminescence.
So the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, bringing it to a luminescence, which of course is an image, but it hopefully calls to mind the idea that it is there, but somehow there's a capacity there. It's an opening, such that really there's no what they call opacities or veils that cut off any of the energy, that somehow it is completely resonant. And so when we do practices, this is something that we could have in mind, that it is, opening out the practice and opening us out, and lowering any veils that prevent us from feeling the circulation of that energy. And later on, Azarbash is going to be leading us in working with wazifas in ways that we might not have thought of before, using these ideas of the holy imagination, I'm liking to call it now. That imagination that doesn't cook up new things just as a whim, but looks at the apparent appearances of things, and through, as they say, bringing it up to a incandescence allows the deeper layers of it to be apparent. And then that's another way of saying then that these opacities have fallen away that block us from this being, let's say, or this beautiful energy, so that it can be not only apparent to us, but also opened out into the world as it never has been before. So let's talk more about the light of glory, Svarna. Most of us are familiar with the halos in the Christian tradition and in Buddhist also, and maybe others. And those represent that idea of the Svarna. It is an indication of station or realization. And it's really a real thing. And some of us can even see the light around a person. And certainly we have, through our practices and really being with a friend and loving someone, knows what it feels like to have this light arise within our being. It is the all luminous substance of which all creatures are made. These are some of the statements from the Zend-Avesta, which is the holy book of the Zoroastrian tradition. It is the fundamental image in which and by which the soul understands itself and perceives its energies and powers. I'm going to say that again. It's the fundamental image in which and by which the soul understands itself and perceives its energies and its powers. So it is an energy, not only thinking of it as light, what we see as our, with our eyes. It's really soul itself, soul understanding itself and perceiving what its energies and powers are. So it's a reflective kind of property. We come across this reflection again and again in this work. A lot of times in even being with a person or being with in a situation where there used to be a blockage before, and now that again falls away, or the situation becomes incandescent, and then all of a sudden there's this recognition. That recognition every time is because of the Svarna. Unlike, as Azarbash was saying, the light that we usually see that is from a point source, this light arises from within, and the most wonderful property of it is this quality of, like we spoke with Camila this week about a matrix, kind of matrix shape and capacity of light that light can have, so that it's really almost bubbling from every facet, from every side, and reflecting all that it has in a very different kind of way that fills us and feels like we're recognizing it from a long time ago, from deep within us. So let me read a little more from the Zend-Avesta. It's the image the soul projects into beings and things, raising them to the incandescence of that victorial fire with which the Zoroastrian soul has set the whole of creation ablaze. So here we're saying the same thing in a few other words, but all full of fire, all full of this activating light. In short, it is by this projection of its own image that the soul, in effecting the transmutation of the earth, establishes an earth image that reflects and announces its own image to the soul. So what are we having now? We are having not only is the soul perceiving its own qualities and abilities and dharma or purpose It's also establishing an earth image that now is a reflection of that one being. We're going to be talking very soon about the angels of transformation, and there's some particular ones that have to do with certain parts of this process. It's at the point by this double reflection of the same light of glory. We're talking about the reflection of the earth image and the image of our own soul, that the earth is revealed to mental sight. The earth is now perceived in the person of its angel. So remember, when we're speaking about being the sons and daughters of the archangel of the earth, Sventa Almighty, this is an opportunity to actually experience, see, feel that angel. So let us now, in using whatever images that may have come to you in this, sit with the idea of Svarna, the idea of Nur, Ya Nur. And we'll say this together, thinking about some of the images that were brought to us, as well as our own discoveries in our spiritual process. So we'll begin intoning Ya Nur. Remember, every time that we say Ya Nur, we are giving an opportunity for an upgrade from the last time that we said Ya Nur. We're not just repeating like number one Ya Nur, number two Ya Nur, no, with no feeling of transformation. We are using that holy imagination that we're speaking about and working with, as we imagine the transformation even in one Ya Nur. Perhaps, and this transformation is not only transforming us in some way, and not for us to feel that light more deeply perhaps, but it's also transforming the light itself. So as you're saying it, perhaps each time you say it, you'll find a new reflective property to it. You might feel it reflecting this way and now reflecting that way, reflecting on something that we had in our day-to-day, or some question that we have, or just a light reflection, like we took a walk and we perceived this bird, and then we perceived this leaf, and the whole story is being told in this beautiful, loving way. So here we go, and you can say it aloud with me as I intone Ya Nur, which is usually thought of as inner light, and in this case, let's think of it as the light of victory, the light that indicates our own realization and the transformation of the earth. Ya Nur, 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 Now let's just sit with this, do the fikr. As we inhale, we think nur. And now fikr asir, which is feeling the effects and also the essence of the practice. And now we'll try to keep this attunement as we continue with this beautiful work of thinking of the angels of transformation.
Yeah. So we've been talking about light, and all of us have experienced different aspects of light, the light of the physical realm, the light of our inner experiences in meditation. And what we probably don't think of too much is the fact that when we're going through this process of awakening and transformation, yes, we do experience different aspects of light, but in the process of experiencing those different stages of the alchemical journey, we're actually bringing about a transformation of the very light itself that we are experiencing. And there's a principle that we have in the Gabrielite work that we call optimization of light. And that is that the nature of light is to always seek a greater expression of itself. And that doesn't mean just turning the brightness up of the light bulb like a spotlight, but the capacity of what is able to come through on that light is continually increasing. So when we are experiencing, like Ravani Rao was talking about, working with the quality, that we're actually contributing to the transformation of the quality itself in that process. And I was reading some of Ibn Arabi earlier today, where he talked about the divine names and really said that these names only exist in the relationship between the manifest being and the divine being, and it's what transpires between those two sides that is the expression of those qualities. So instead of the perhaps more typical notion of what the qualities are, they're just kind of sitting out there waiting for us to tap into them or experience them in our being. It's actually, in some sense, you could say they don't have their existence except when there's an experience, when there's something in existence in relationship with the divine side or the transcendent side of things to enable the expression of that quality. So we have all the different names of God, and we could perhaps think of those as representing all the different, not all of them, but many different ways of relationship of the divine with manifestation, that they emerge through that relationship. So holiness that Ravani Rao talked about, holy imagination, holiness is not something that's sitting there waiting for us to get close to it and experience it. Holiness is what arises when we are in a state of relationship with something on the transcendent side of things that causes that holiness to be expressed, to be able to be experienced. So in a sense, we could say it's birthed through that connectedness. And to the extent that we awaken the deeper levels of our being, the potential, the little passage I read earlier about the possibilities in the light, those possibilities are opened up more and more by the more that we can bring to that way of relating to the divine side, which can be described as our personal angel or our personal Lord. It's our unique connection with divinity. It's not a generic connection with the same God. Even Arby called it the corporate God versus the personal Lord. There's something embodied in, you can pick any divine name, any wazifa. There's something that emerges in our experience of that can only come through us. It's a unique flavor, you could say, of that particular quality. And so we are adding to that. If it's beauty, we are contributing to beauty becoming even more enriched by our unique state of being in relationship to what we're experiencing.
We can even think of that in terms of our social connections, that we might know somebody who, well, they have a beautiful yard, but they have very few things in that yard, and they're really wishing that they knew more about flowers and beauty and what they could do. And so we said, wow, would you like to meet so-and-so, or would you like to? And then we have some that are having difficulties, and we know somebody who really could help them. And so, and it's a kind of socializing of spirituality. And I'm thinking of it in that way, that, because we love this one, we love this one, we have a connection with them, and then through us, something is born. And this happens in our spiritual neighborhoods. And it's a beautiful thing. And especially as we work with the light and we work with our imaginations, the depth to which this happens is way more than the friends that we may have in life. There's, almost an effervescence that happens in the process, where now the surface area, you might say, of all of these bubbles is just, multiple times what it was at the beginning. And so now there's this amazing these possibilities now are connected to those who could fulfill those possibilities. And at some point, there's not even any work that is done in the, except for the connections of all of this. And I think you all are familiar with that. In fact, I hope that a lot of the things we're speaking about here today is almost like, oh, they're talking about me. They're talking about something that's so familiar to me. So we want to continue this familiarity in speaking about these angels. That we're always wanting to see them as parts of ourselves, maybe personalities of our different times, but especially us as we've gone through the alchemical process, us as we have achieved some degree of realization about things. They mark the stations of realization, you could say, and each one highlights a different aspect of us and resonates with us. So it'll be kind of a reunion here of sorts, spiritual reunion. I'd like to quickly note at the beginning of this, we've spoken about Svarna. So all of these beings, all of the beings, all of us are made of Svarna. I guess it could be incised or developed to a certain extent more than others. Some of it will reflect blazingly and some we just have a little trickle, a little glimmer, and sometimes we are kind of clouded over, but we are all made of this beautiful substance, and hopefully it'll glow within you as I'm speaking about the different angels. So, but first I wanted to speak of the archangels, the highest of the high, and you might think of them as in the Jabarut realm, if you know about the different realms. And these are a beautiful image, in that I've said before at the very beginning, I believe, that there are 3 masculine archangels, 3 feminine archangels, and Ormazd, who is a combination of both. And if you could see them as perhaps Ormazd in the center, and then 3 on one side, 3 on the other side, it's a beautiful shape. In fact, I love that shape so much that the beautiful ring that Azerbash gave me, we chose one that had that particular arrangement of these, like the archangels. And the beautiful thing about these archangels is that it's like each one lives, their existence is reflective of all the others. It's like they're living their life, but in reflection of all the other lives. Or you could even, pray to one of them, and it would be communicated to all the other angels. And they would speak of them as the Mazda. Like Mazda was the word for Zoroastrianism, the whole religion. And the Lord's Mazda means all of them together. And so most of the time they speak of Ahura Mazda, and Ahura means God, a different station. And so it's like speaking of the one, but all of them in the one, the many in the one. So we're already getting that feeling of this energy that is communicated among them and between them. And that is this Varna, again, that is playing and being the material, and at the same time the action, and at the same time the fulfillment of the action itself. So let's speak of the first of the angels. I think that Azerbash was already speaking about her in what he was saying, because it is very much about individuality. She's Daena is her name, Daena. And she is, she expresses the individuality of a being. We all have a dharma, a job, a purpose, but each one of us is going to be doing it in a different way, and with a different story that we feel like is unfolding. And those that we think of, that we love, we're surrounded with, they're different than others may be. And that is all the way it needs to be. That is all like the different faces of the divine. So Daena, they say that she is typifies the celestial I. I, the letter I, the individual, the celestial individual, you might say. So she's one of them when we have the experience of walking down the path and meeting that being and feeling so close to that being and finding out, oh my gosh, I think that's me. Or being with a friend again, and saying, oh, I really identify with you. But this brings you close together with this being. And she is, again, we've spoken about these 3 principles also, which sound familiar in other religions, which are thought, word, and deed. That we will, do the best that we can in our thought, which reminds me back to Sventa Almighty. We were told to hold the thought of wisdom, or the holy thought. So she, in this tradition, Sventa Almighty, the entire archangel of the whole earth, represents holy thought, but Diana represents holy action. So it is taking that thought and now bringing it into our abilities, into our individuality, and thinking, what is it then that I can do? How can I respond to this? Well, to this pandemic, maybe I can make masks, or I really want to stand up for these people and I'm going to march, or I'm going to, you know, the different ways that we all have to respond has to do with our holy action. And hopefully holy action, meaning that it is taken in a spirit of, now that you are the son or daughter of Sveta Almighty, that it is done for the whole of all of us, the whole creation. And the goal being that phrase that you might have heard from Zoroastrian tradition, may we be among those who will bring about the transfiguration of the earth. So it is done in a great resonating condition, knowing who it is that's doing this. Well, you know who it really is doing this. It's the divine doing this. We have this wonderful job of being what in Christianity is called the theophore. Theophore means the bearer of God. So we have that amazing and sometimes very difficult and but something of an incredible intimacy. And here's that story again of how can we be living this incredible intimacy and realizing it is about the entire universe. That is our task. That is our task. So Diana is the one who, we would say, performs the holy action in this condition of realizing the small in the large, the intimate in the large story. Did you want to say something about her?
So each of these angels, and I don't think we're going to get to all of them tonight, is unique for each one of us. So it's not the same Diana for everybody. Even Harvey would talk about this as your personal Lord or your personal angel. And we can also say that each of these angels of transformation signifies a process that takes place in, well, let's go back to what Murshid says about every desire begins with a divine impulse. And each of our souls, we could say, was created from a divine impulse for something the divine longed to experience that could only come through us, that could not be known until we developed the capacity of awakening in life and joining in that process to creatively participate in what arises. So, as Ravani Rao was saying, when we're doing this work, on the one end, it seems like we're doing it for ourselves. We're doing it to become more awakened, more illuminated, and so on. But actually, we are literally fulfilling a divine purpose. We are bringing something through that began with a divine impulse that was not finished. It was not like this completed blueprint that we were just supposed to follow through and do just the way that it was done. It was always going to be a creative work in progress. And we are bringing about, we talk about awakening of divinity in life. And the way I thought about that for a very long time was, well, we're awakening to our divinity, or we're awakening God through us, but we are awakening the aspect of the divine being that's unique in all of existence in life, so the divine can have an experience that couldn't take place except for us. So, and all of these angels that we're going to be hearing about are descriptive of divine functions that are necessary parts of this process of unfoldment that are necessary parts of the actual transformation of what kind of light can come through all the way down into the world, into existence, what quality of light, what capacity of light, and how the world is opened up into a much richer and deeper reality because of our reflection of that, our experience of that, what comes from us. We talk about illuminated beings, and they're full of light, and we see them, and we see all this light coming from them. But another property is they are illuminative beings. They are beings that help to bring about a transformation of the whole environment that they're in. They are catalysts to trigger off the Svarna bursting forth of everything that they are in relationship with. And that's the way that we can become powerful, almost beyond our usual imagination, vehicles of change in this reality that we think that we're in, when in fact we're actually existing in a much deeper reality, and we're awakening to who and how we really are.
Well, there are only going to be two more that we'll speak about
okay.
tonight, so I think we'll be good. One of them being Ashi Venuhi. This is the longest name. I know some people are taking notes, so I will be spelling that A-S-H-I. And the second word is Venuhi, V-A-N-U-H-I. Ashi Venuhi. This is the angel who bestows and possesses Svarna. She is herself the Svarna also. As we spoke before, there's a lot of, changing of positions or explanations that she bestows Svarna. She is Svarna, the victorial fire, which is the glory and destiny of all beings. And the wonderful thing is we are familiar with her in terms of Nike. If you think of that chariot of victory in mythology, to meet Ashi Venuhi is to be invited to sit on her chariot of victory. It's a psychic event, we say here, that it anticipates the ultimate experience of the permanent rising of the light of glory within us, the total illumination. So what this is, in our Sufi terminology, is the hall experience. She takes you up into her chariot, and you feel the intensity of Svarna, like with no filters, with no opacities. It's like a gem that is totally polished and shining, and is totally illuminative, as Azarbash was saying, and illuminated. So we perceive that light and we feel that light as if we were at a retreat intensively for, a long time, and have really come to a realization that is just incredible. So a foretaste of the full realization. This is Ashi Venuhi.
So we could think too, we've talked in our previous meetings about the necessity of there being a dramatic or radical shift in our consciousness, and not just like getting to a higher state of consciousness, but our whole way of relating to what and how we are experiencing. And each time we undergo a process of Fana, that shattering of the old way, and that in-between time, and then baqa, that reorganization to a higher state of being, now that becomes our basis of relationship, transcendent to it. So this particular angel, I have an image of someone wants to climb a cliff, and it's a sheer wall. And to start with, they're going to probably have to throw a line up and just get it hooked up to a ledge higher up that they can put some stronger things on there. So now there can be footholds to climb up there. So this angel gives us a temporary, as Ravani Rao said, a hall experience of a deeper level of our own being. And it's temporary because we have not yet established you could say, a scaffolding, a way of bridging the state of understanding from where we were to what that state entails. And so here's like a seed of it. We've had a temporary experience of it. And then gradually through the process, and there's many ways in this, and we're sharing lots of ways to work with practices. It could be through imagery, it could be through sound, it could be through metaphor. We have some way of relating to what this experience is that's not at all the same as what we're used to. It's like a new fragrance you've never smelled, or a taste that you've never tasted, and you're trying to relate it to what you've known before, and it doesn't connect. You have to establish a basis where this now becomes a part of your experience. So this is an essential part of the ongoing process of birthing the resurrection body, to have a vision, we could say, of what's a deeper, higher level aspect of our being. And then once we establish that, and Rabani Ra is going to be talking about another angel in a minute here, then our maqam has changed. Now our maqam incorporates all that we've experienced in all the previous levels and this one, and we now embody this all as parts of the oneness of what our being is all about. It's not a separated out somewhere. It's part of who we are, and we can actively engage in the circulation between the levels of our being.
I did want to go back for just a second to Ashi Venuhi, because she also is the angel of the holy word, as in thought, word, and deed. And I still have some exploring to do about Ashi Venuhi and the word. I didn't really see how what I read there had to do with that. So maybe you can investigate some also. But the final one to speak of tonight is called Arshtat, A-R-S-H-T-A-T. And she is the angel of the everlasting radiance. So this would be the full illumination. And the other thing about her is that now, not only are we speaking of the individual illumination, we are speaking about the salvation of the earth. Here we're talking about the transfiguration of the earth itself. So in person, the image of the earth is seen reflected into the image of the soul that transfigured it. So now it's the salvation of both at the same time, because it is also the realization that there is no separation between this individual and the whole of the manifestation. There is no dividing line. It is all that reflection. And it is said that this is an existence with the nature of fire, when all creatures will possess an incorruptible body of luminous fire. I'll say that again. It's an existence with the nature of fire, when all creatures will possess an incorruptible body of luminous fire. And if you remember that when we're speaking of this transformation, this ultimate transfiguration, time does not relate anymore. And so we're not speaking like the end of time. Just as we speak of that the creation is always happening, we're always at the beginning of creation, we are always also at the end of this illumination, at this ultimate moment. We, meaning, well, somewhere in this whole universe, somewhere in this creation, there is a station, kind of like when we speak about the different maqams, or I would say realms, that they're all there at the same time. There's not one that's there before the other. It's a matrix, as we were saying with Camila, of all of these times, so that we have that circulation that can take us to this point like we talk about eschatology in Christianity too, where we can experience the coming of Christ even though we're in the stage where this is all kind of building up. Or like in the time that we're in right now, this is the perfect time to be experiencing eschatology, to be experiencing the flow of all times, not just the one that we seem to be incredibly stuck in right now, in this material existence. I'll say one more line about Arshtat is that she exemplifies the radiance embodied in beings, which gives us capacity to fulfill this metamorphosis. Okay, so again, there is this embodied within us that gives us the capacity to fulfill the metamorphosis that we're speaking of. And just one more word about the class, the series coming up. We're going to really go into depth about what is this that we call the true imagination, and what are these abilities that we're speaking of, or these muscles that need to be worked out, that we have in our inner being, that we can, through different practices and realizations, bring to to an expression that I really haven't heard before, that we usually leave it to people to, find your own way and but there are some things we can do together to identify some of these and work together, and I'm really looking forward to that. Would you like to add?
Yeah. There's a famous line, I believe it's in the Quran, that everything fades away except his face. And that's usually thought of as well, that everything manifestation is temporal and fleeting, and the only thing that remains is the divine, capital D, divine. But I was reading some more of Ibn Arabi earlier today, and the way that he talked about this was that what that face is, it's like the Pure would talk about our divine countenance, which is not the same for each person. It's the unique way the fulfillment of divinity shines through each of our beings. And when we can awaken to a way of relating, we've awakened the multidimensionality of our being, we've awakened a way of relating to whatever we're experiencing, which I call relational unity. It's not separated from, it's not, our identity is not lost and dissolved into it. It's a very intimate co-presence with whatever we're experiencing, so that everything is revealing itself to everything else. Everything is illuminating everything else, and everything is being illuminated by everything else. So you could say the world becomes, as Ravani Rao was talking about this description of fire, the world becomes incandescent. The world becomes filled with light, and it's not just some amorphous blend of light that there's nothing to be made out of. There still the existence in all the realms of the beings, in all the realms, but now the divinity, the stops have been pulled out, so the divine light can blaze forth in its fullness to the extent of the capacity of the beings in manifestation. And earlier when Ravani Rao was talking about Nike and the chariot, I had to think about the Bhagavad Gita, if you're familiar with that. The whole story is Krishna is the charioteer for Arjuna, his disciple, and he's teaching him everything about every aspect of existence in the middle of a battlefield, but it's on this chariot. It's like the vehicle that's going to enable this awakening to take place, where right in the thick of things, right in the thick of life, which is what our aim is. That saying die before death and resurrect now is not only about, well, why wait till you've shed this body to achieve this realization. It's like this is why we're here. I mean, to bring this into life, to bring about the transformation of the world that we're living in and walking around in. I should say the world that we thought that we were in, because when we have this realization, we discovered that the world that we're really in is something so much richer than that. But now we've opened up a connection and a capacity, and it's like a chain reaction, that the more people, the more beings that come to this state of realization and awakening, the more this is triggered throughout everything, and the easier it becomes for other beings to be able to awaken to that themselves. Something's been changed, you could say, in the whole field of spiritual consciousness. It's like, well, kind of a trivial example. There's been research to show that on Mondays, people can solve the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle quicker than the people who first look at it on Sunday. And they haven't seen it, they haven't gotten any information, but something has been added to kind of the collective field by the people that have worked it out. So we've got a history of, you know, beings known and unknown that have made breakthroughs in spirituality, that have carved out pathways for us. And part of what we're hoping to convey is that realization doesn't stop just with everything prior to us, these great beings that we think, oh, I couldn't be anything like that. We are each called to become like that, to, like Jesus said, what I've done, you can do it and more. Well, that part doesn't get preached very much, but I think that was really the heart of his message. He was an exemplar of the possibilities of human existence. And Ibn Arabi talks about, I can't remember the Arabic term, but the perfect man, the perfect human being that becomes the fulfillment of this relationship between their human and divine parts. And he says that neither of those aspects has any meaningfulness or existence without the other. So the human doesn't disappear to the divine doesn't disappear to the human. It's only by the awakened relationship, which we'll have much more to say in the coming series, which we're going to be calling Living in the Resurrection Body, about that. So we hope that what we've been sharing with you will really trigger off some excitement about what spirituality can mean far beyond a process of our own individual awakening, not only in terms of what it can do to bring about a change in the world, but just the possibilities for the future are unlimited.
So the challenge you accepted tonight was to have us do a practice in the way that maybe goes with what we learned tonight.
Okay, challenge accepted.
Thank you.
Well, Ravani Ra's already been talking about Noor, and there's a practice that I have done fairly often, working with the 7 traditional chakras, starting at the base of the spine, and the head is done in the motion of the zikr. Most of you are familiar, but if not, once again, you start left shoulder, head going down, 3/4 of a circle, right shoulder and up, and then down to the solar plexus. Well, in this case, you're going to be imagining going down into whatever chakra that we're working with. And we're going to put 3 different divine names together with this one. Noor, which Ravani Ra has talked a lot about, the uncreated light, the light of the angelic realm, which burst forth into existence through Svarna. So that's Noor. And many of you are familiar with Kudus, Q-U-D-D-U-S, which means pure spirit. Pir Vilayat would say Kudus is the catalyst of life energy. It's that which enables life to live. And the third part is Ba'ith, B-A-I-T-H, which means the resurrection. So the words are going to be Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Ba'ith, and then The head was going to go down on Hu, the divine presence, and up on Allah. And the Allah here is not, as Ibn Arabi would say, the corporate God of the different religions. This is your personal Lord is awakened. I mean, you've awakened what can only come through by the fulfillment of your purpose in this existence. So we're going to do this through each chakra, symbolizing this awakening taking place in all the realms of our being. So the base chakra is at the base of the spine. The head will go in 3/4 of a circle. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Ba'ith. So in the 3/4 of a circle, Nur, Kudus, Ba'ith. And the head goes down to the base chakra on Hu, and then up on Allah. So we're just going to do it 3 times in each chakra. So I'll do it once, and then we'll do it 3 times together. The second chakra is around the sexual organs, behind them. The third chakra is the solar plexus. The fourth is the heart. The fifth is the throat. The sixth is the third eye, and then the crown center. Okay, so I'll just do it once, and then you join with me 3 times in each chakra. And you are using this light and the energy of pure spirit to trigger off this resurrection, this part of the resurrection body, awakening and connecting it up, your human and divine experience with the Hu and the Allah. So it's like this. Concentrating in the base of the spine. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Okay, 3 times. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Second chakra. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Solar plexus. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Heart center. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Throat center. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Third eye. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Crown center. Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah, Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah, Ya Nur, Ya Kudus, Ya Bai, Hu, Allah. Feel yourself as an awakened being of light existing through all the levels. Being a source of transformation and fulfillment of your own divine purpose. And with the thought of light, let us encompass the world. And may that light, increasing without limit, encompass the whole universe up to its confines. Amen.